the 23rd of December and 2 days away from Christmas, and I'm here thinking and contemplating about family and my hometown, Tralee, County Kerry, Ireland, in the southwest, on the coast here in Ireland. Basically, events that have occurred have brought me to think a bit more about my family and my ancestral lines. I'm Griffin and I'm O'Sullivan. O'Sullivan on my maternal side, Griffin on my paternal side. I'm Fernan. They arrived here around the time of the Spanish Inquisition. Around the southwest, they arrived in Dingle, and I'm O'Higgins, and our ancestral homes are out in Anna on the way out to Dingle on Dangany Coosh. I'm also McElligott on my paternal family. There's McElligots, and there's O'Connors in my paternal family also. And the reason I'm thinking about my ancestral lines is not only because of the time of year that it is, but also because of the simple statement that was said to me when I was very young, to know who you are. And as I'm nearing 40 years of age and having become a mother, it becomes more relevant to know our hereditary and our bloodlines and our pasts. And when I was a child, when I was very young, I spent a lot of time in Clahan, Ballard, Tralee, County Kerry, and that was the home of my great grandfather, Tim McElligott, and he was a great man. He was a tall man and he was a powerful man, and he worked diligently and he worked methodically and he worked impeccably. They originally came from Kilflyn in the 19th century, from Stacks Mountain to Clahan Ballard. It was around the time of the Land Commission in Ireland, and the move was a long trek from one mountain to another mountain, and the significance of all of this is absolutely amazing. He was a big influence on my father, who worked exactly like him, diligently and impeccably, in family life and in rural agricultural settings as well. I remember being told that every spring my great-grandfather would whitewash the cottage up in Clahan, and the orchard was always kept impeccably. Those memories that I have shared that my father has shared with me about my great-grandfather has had an influence on me as a young woman, and since I was a child. The work ethic and the mentality of my great-grandfather Tim McElligott has become apparent even to this day. The unfortunate part about this is that my ability to work has been affected, even as I sit here now resting and suffering physically. I'm not able to have even the regular activity that I'd usually enjoy. When I was, in my marital home, I enjoyed working out in nature, and even when I was a child, I used to enjoy working in nature, and I have such love and respect for this county that is so full of beauty, from Brandon Mountain to the mountain in Clahan and to the mountain in Kilflyn. I used to enjoy mountaineering, and I used to enjoy discovering where my ancestors had lived and where my ancestors had been. Another interesting and fascinating fact that I learned about my great-grandfather, Tim McElligott, was that the Blennerville Canal that my maternal grandfather had also worked at, Gary Fernan, was actually constructed, and the work all conducted by my great-grandfather Tim McElligott, and that construction went from Blennerville all the way out to Feenet. And on a few occasions, when I was in better health, I used to love walking along that entire stretch of pathway from Blennerville to Feenet. And to have walked in his footsteps, and to think of the achievements of my ancestors, is what I'm thinking of at this time of year. It's absolutely fascinating to think of how the past impacts the present, and how our ancestors affect our futures. And having been from this town and county, and having been born in this town and county, I have to say I'm very proud to be a Kerry woman. And I'm fully aware that with all the uploads of the wrongdoings that I've been experiencing, present circumstances haven't been very positive. But I have to say that for a tourist attraction, the county itself has so much to offer, and that's why it basically brings me so much sadness to think that it has been spoiled by this vendetta of hatred. As I've said, I'm a very proud Kerry woman, and I'm very proud of my ancestry, the O'Sullivans in particular. My ancestors on my maternal side were very much involved in politics and had a great influence on the political climate at the start of the 20th century. In Mr. Dwyer's book, tracing the history of Kerry, my great grandfather or uncle Garrett Fernan, he led a battalion from Feenet to Tralee, and that was around early 1900s. So history, ancestry, knowing who you are and where you came from and all that, it's so relevant as you get older, and especially when you're from such a county as Kerry. It's an interesting county, and that has affected, political situations quite positively. As I said though, it's very upsetting what's happening at the moment, because there's history and there's myth, there's fact and there's fiction, and what displeases me the most as a graduate of culture, sociology, etc., is basically, and anthropology, basically, what I find very disturbing is how people try to rewrite history, and that's not always, positive. There's fact and fiction, as I've said, and people only want to know the facts. People don't want to live in a web of lies based on myth and delusion. The fact of the matter is also is that with regard to ancestry, the experience that I'm having has been involving my ancestral lines being violated and assaulted. I take very serious exception to this because on my maternal side, both my maternal and my paternal families have very interesting histories and very interesting, connections. But I think, even before I say what I need to say, that we're all connected in one way or another. Ireland is a small country, and we're all related. We're all interconnected. But the point I'm getting at is that on my maternal side, particularly with the Spanish line of Fernan and the O'Higgins in particular as well, there were sisters of the O'Higgins that were absolute ladies, and it's still so evident today that the sisters of the O'Higgins from over a century ago, I have the most beautiful photos of my own O'Higgins ancestors, and the resemblance of those women in my maternal family today is glaringly obvious. It's remarkable, to say the least, how our genes have come along from Spain and other parts of Europe to Tralee, County Kerry, Ireland. So, at this time of year, I'm here thinking of my own family today, and as a mother, I'm thinking how the past has affected this present that we're having, or that I was having until the assault of my ancestral lines was perpetrated, which has also been an aspect, unfortunately, of this human rights violation. The individuals that I'm fully aware of that have violated records of ancestral lines, that have been altering information and records of my ancestral lines, is a very serious concern for me. I am Emer Griffin McElligott, and there isn't any other person with my identity or with my bloodline or with my ancestral lines. Now, I find it very serious and very worrying that any other woman or family would even try to attempt to violate my ancestral lines or records. I'm also very concerned that the issue of identity theft has become an issue in this vendetta of human rights violations. As I've said, I am aware of the individual that has been assaulting my spirituality as a feminine spiritual woman, that has been assaulting my bodily integrity, and that has been imposing in my family life, my career, my livelihood. But it's not just imposing; it's a very serious case of identity theft. The records of my genealogy and my hereditary you know, this matter is very serious. So, for the person and individuals that are changing history to suit themselves and to elevate themselves and to try and upgrade themselves with, an identity that doesn't belong to them, and that they, I hope that they might consider the implications of how serious such a situation is. There's been a lot of misinformation, there's been a lot of defamation, and when it comes to a person's identity being altered or intruded upon, that's an offence, that's a criminal offence. And as for any, alteration of the facts, I think there's a very serious obligation of state agencies to ensure that such an occurrence of altering and changing the facts and such information isn't facilitated at no matter what cost, because as they say, my blood is not your blood, you know. And with regard to the violations of bodily integrity that I've experienced in a spiritual assault, my light is not anybody else's light. And as a light worker, as a royal spiritual light worker, I have been absolutely desecrated, and there has been absolutely no regard for the gifts, light and blessings that have been destroyed by individuals claiming to be who they aren't. The most worrying part about it is that the individuals that I'm aware of and the specific individual that I'm aware of to be violating a light worker and to be assaulting ancestral lines. I'm wondering how a disturbing situation like this could be facilitated. But that's with regard to my ancestry. As regards the issue of identity theft, I'm, after being explaining in these uploads how many violations I've experienced, I went to the University of Limerick and Hibernia College, as I've stated. My educational career was interfered with. The information and documents and facts about my educational career were all intruded and interfered with. The professional career that I've had has also been, people have been misinformed about my career. As regards my family life and my personal life, the disinformation that has been shared publicly have all presented inaccurate facts. So, as a student and graduate of anthropology and culture and sociology, I find it very worrying about not only the claims and comments that have been stated, but also about the messages and broadcasting in the media about this situation, because I have contacted, as I have said, politicians, and they have ignored what I'm experiencing. Now, due to the gargantuous effort in identity theft that's being perpetrated and orchestrated in this town and county, the issue of politicians intentionally ignoring what is happening is more than obvious. The reason for them ignoring this is more than obvious. Societal engineering, isn't always positive, especially when it comes to such a serious matter of ancestry. Um, I've heard of caste systems in society, and I'd associate the caste system with Buddhism. And Buddhism is a beautiful spiritual faith. And with Buddhism, you are required to respect the eight road, the path of the eight roads of nobility, and the other aspects of Buddhism that are important. And with Buddhism, there's the caste system. That's India. That's their set of beliefs and system. This is Ireland, and with regard to a caste system being orchestrated or designed in any society, I'm wondering how any kind of an ideology would ever be possibly implemented without having actually respected the proper facets or the actual original facets of a society. What I'm getting at is that people are trying to downgrade Emer Griffin McElligott in society by impoverishing me, by stealing from me, by defaming me, by violating my rights. What sense or logic or rationale is there to that kind of a societal engineering system of downgrading a woman that has worked professionally, ethically, respectfully in society, and that, has been law abiding, that has been spiritually impeccable, and that has, contributed positively to society. What is happening isn't just a violation of human rights. It's deceitful. It's a deceitful situation where I am being misrepresented, and I'm being misinformed, and I'm being disrespected. I've worked honestly for people in this community. I've worked honestly for, employers abroad, and I've volunteered, as I've said, at home and abroad also. So for my human rights and my identity to be violated by an individual not so as impeccable at all, and that has actually been causing quite serious disruption, expense, and disturbance in society, to be facilitated is very serious. The damages incurred in the assaults that I've experienced, as I've said, have not been compensated. There are so many factors to this situation. It's quite intricate and complex to explain it carefully online without those scrutinising me trying to find cause for further criticisms, because I've been very heavily, criticised for no reasons at all, except for the, reason of hate crime, because that's what this is. People have excluded me in this community due to another individual or two that have their own ambitious intentions that aren't actually in any way displaying any integrity, and are actually in many ways very, very disturbing. Identity theft is serious. all human rights violations that I've experienced are serious. But as I've said, my blood is not your blood, and my light is not your light. And the politicians that are ignoring this matter, I would hope that you would see the light of day and realise that this situation isn't very conducive to progress. Because as a proud Kerry woman and as a very proud Irish woman, I think the history of Ireland is perfect as it is. And rewriting history and rewriting records and presenting false information about any citizen doesn't say much for this society, because Irish history is interesting and it's fascinating and it's full of richness and it's full of fascinating facts about how far we have come from very difficult times. And for me personally, from a subjective perspective, to have come from the difficult times that I've had and to have achieved what I achieved single-handedly, and to have been able to upload and speak as honestly as I'm speaking, and to be able to say that I'm absolutely and utterly appalled that anybody would facilitate any other individual rewriting my history or imposing in my purpose. As a mother, as a wife, as a teacher, as a humanitarian, as a royal angelic light worker, etc., etc., etc. The tactics that I've explained in all of this situation that have been perpetrated, the wrongdoings, the offences, the violations, the false claims, the theft of wealth, etc., 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 that have all been perpetrated since I got married and gave birth, signifies just how sordid a situation has been caused to facilitate an imposter in my purpose. So, 2 days away from Christmas, here I am in HAPS accommodation as a mother and deserted wife, and as an unemployed job seekers allowance recipient, suffering physically, and the government have still not acknowledged how serious a situation has been caused for me. So this matter is more than just a concern. I'm not pleased in the slightest about what has happened in this community. I don't appreciate people claiming falsehoods. I don't appreciate people imposing in my private life. I don't appreciate people stealing from me and damaging my family, etc., etc., etc. So the ministers that I would expect to have logic and reason and understanding about what ancestral assault is and what spiritual violence is, amongst the other human rights that are also being assaulted and disrespected and violated. I hope the ministers understand how important my purpose is for me and how important my hereditary and ancestry is for me. And I don't appreciate people rewriting my records and misinterpreting the facts or falsifying the facts. My lineage is important to me, do you know? So identity theft is a serious offence that has been perpetrated in this vendetta of hate crime and human rights violations. I hope that authorities and politicians understand the seriousness of all that has occurred, and I hope they would have the better sense of not trying to rewrite her story and to actually acknowledge the facts of the real history of this situation.